Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says his country wants a durable peace in Afghanistan. He said this during a meeting with the former chairman of the Afghan Peace Council, Karim Khalili, who called on him in Islamabad. The Prime Minister urged all the sides to work for a peaceful resolution of the Afghan conflict. He said peace in Afghanistan will pave the way for regional development. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office says a 10-year-old boy was seriously injured in unprovoked Indian fighting at Nezapi sector yesterday. It says the Indian forces are continuously targeting civilian population with heavy caliber mortars and automatic weapons. The Pakistan Navy has successfully demonstrated anti-ship missiles firing and torpedoes from underwater in the Arabian Sea. The naval fleet also demonstrated the combat readiness and war-fighting potential through live weapons firing. In India, the Supreme Court has temporarily suspended the implementation of controversial new agricultural laws. In a hearing, Chief Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde said the court will form a committee to hear the grievances of farmers. The protesting farmers have been camping on Delhi borders against agricultural reforms for nearly 2 months. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says his country is ready to mend ties with the European Union, but he reiterated the need for the EU to tackle the menace of anti-Muslim prejudice in their countries. The number of COVID-19 deaths in the UK has crossed 82,000 with over 3.1 million infections. Deaths in the US have topped 376,000 as its case load exceeds 22.6 million. In Pakistan, 2,400 new cases and 41 fatalities were reported overnight, with the death toll crossing 10,700. Globally, the virus has claimed 1.94 million lives and infected over 90.6 million people. And in motorsports, this year's Australian and Chinese Grand Prix have been postponed because of the COVID-19 restrictions. The season will now kick-start with a race in Bahrain in March, but the Australian Grand Prix has been moved to November. F1 officials say discussions over a new date for the Chinese Grand Prix are ongoing. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says his country wants a durable peace in Afghanistan. He said this during a meeting with the former chairman of the Afghan Peace Council, Karim Khalili, who called on him in Islamabad. The Prime Minister urged all the sides to work for a peaceful resolution of the Afghan conflict. He said peace in Afghanistan will pave the way for regional development. Earlier, Khalili called on Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa at the General Headquarters. According to the military's media wing, the two sides discussed the Afghan peace process and bilateral relations. During the meeting, General Bajwa said a stable and prosperous Afghanistan is in Pakistan's interest. In his meeting with Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Khalili lauded Pakistan's role in the peace process and thanked Pakistan for hosting Afghan refugees. In his remarks, Qureshi said India is trying to sabotage the peace process and reaffirmed the country's commitment to peace and stability in Afghanistan. And for more on this, we are joined by our correspondent Sumaira Khan from Islamabad. So Sumaira, what high-level engagements did Karim Khalili have in Pakistan today?
The visiting Afghan dignitary who has been holding a very important position in Afghanistan and who is still being deemed as one of the most influential personalities back in Afghanistan. He has been like chairman Hizb Wahdat-e-Islami Afghanistan and former chairman Afghan High Peace Council. He was invited to Pakistan. He had many engagements with the Pakistani government authorities, including Prime Minister of Pakistan, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and later in the day he met Chief of Army Staff in Rawalpindi at GHQ. And in all the meetings, obviously, the agenda was to discuss the ongoing peace process in Doha and Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process in Afghanistan, for which Pakistan has been playing a significant role. So he has been meeting all these personalities in Pakistan, and later in the day, according to my information right now, he is attending a banquet given to him by the special advisor to Pakistan on Afghanistan, Ambassador Muhammad Sadiq, who has been serving as ambassador to Afghanistan earlier. Right now he's in that banquet, and he's expected to meet the National Speaker, National Assembly, Asad Kaisar as well. And apart from that, if we talk about his schedule tomorrow, because tomorrow he'll be leaving for Afghanistan. Tomorrow he'll be participating in a public dialogue at Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad, and we are invited there. But I just come from one of the media interactions he held in the previous couple of hours, and we met him there where he was supposed to meet, where he was having the interaction with few selected media personnel. So I just come from that media interaction, and after that he left for the banquet.
So Sumaira, you already mentioned that the main agenda of his meetings with the high-ranking officials in Pakistan was the Afghan peace process, so specifically talking about this particular peace process and these talks which are underway in Doha. So what he had to share with the Pakistani authorities?
Karim Khalili has a very optimistic point of view regarding the ongoing peace process, but obviously there were certain fears that he expressed regarding the spoilers back home, and he did talk about those fears and factors that are right now trying to tarnish the whole process that was initiated mutually by Pakistan and Afghanistan to achieve the milestone of Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process for the Afghanistan, because it's a war-torn country, and Karim Khalili also expressed similar views while meeting Prime Minister Imran Khan, meeting Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa, the Speaker of the National Assembly, and while meeting us even, he expressed those fears that yes, spoilers are quite active, but there is need to cool down the atmosphere, and there is a need to understand the process right now. So he said that mutually in support, having that immense support from Pakistan, that it has been rendering from the day one to bring all the parties, all the stakeholders to the table to hold these rounds of dialogue. So we are there to secure it, and he, in particular, he said that Pakistan has played significant role in bringing down the temperatures that were once on a very high point after few clashes between the Afghan forces and Taliban in Kabul, and a few terrorist activities as well. So he was quite certain about that. He said that although there is no breakthrough in the rounds of dialogue right now at Doha, but he was very optimistic, having a positive outcome of the peace process.
Well, Welcome back. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to protest against the latest ceasefire violation by India along the line of control, a day after a 10-year-old boy was wounded in unprovoked Indian fighting along the line of control on Monday. The Indian side was told that such senseless acts are in clear violation of the 2003 ceasefire understanding. The Foreign Office said Indian forces are continuously targeting the civilian population with artillery fire, mortars and automatic weapons. It said Indian troops have committed 48 ceasefire violations this month alone. The Pakistan Navy has successfully demonstrated anti-ship missiles firing and torpedoes from underwater in the Arabian Sea. The naval fleet also demonstrated the combat readiness and war fighting potential through live weapons fighting. Chief of Naval Staff Admiral Muhammad Amjad Khan Niazi witnessed the test of missiles and torpedoes. The naval chief expressed satisfaction over operational preparedness of the Pakistan Navy. He said that the Pakistan Navy is capable of thwarting any evil designs of any adversary. He added that the Pakistan Navy will continue to play its role in making the country's defense impregnable. In India, the Supreme Court has temporarily suspended the implementation of controversial new agricultural laws. In a hearing, Chief Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde said the court will form a committee to hear the grievances of the farmers. Tens of thousands of farmers have been camping at the Delhi borders against agriculture reforms for nearly 2 months. Nearly 80 farmers have lost their lives during the protest. In the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump has approved an emergency declaration for Washington that will last through January 24. This comes after the FBI warned of more armed demonstrations by Trump supporters ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. More in this report.
Extraordinary and unprecedented actions are unfolding as the U.S. gears up to protect the American democracy, not from a foreign terrorist threat, but from Americans themselves. Following the storming of Capitol Hill that cost 5 lives, including a policeman, President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration ceremony on January 20 has been scaled back dramatically, with 15,000 National Guard troops set to secure the event. Washington, D.C. is on a high alert after the FBI warned of more armed protest on the day.
I sent a letter yesterday requesting that the president declare a pre-emergency disaster for the District of Columbia. D.C. requested and was granted this designation in 2009 to support the inauguration of President Barack Obama. This is necessary because the inauguration poses several unprecedented challenges that exceed the scope of our traditional planning processes.
Tourists have been barred from visiting the Washington Monument due to threats of more violence from Trump supporters. But speaking in Delaware, Biden said he's unfazed by the threats.
I'm not afraid of taking the oath outside, and we've been getting briefed, but I think it's critically important that there be a real serious focus on holding those folks who engage in sedition and threaten people's lives, deface public property, cause great damage, that they be held accountable. And I think that's a view that is held by the vast majority of Democrats and Republicans in the Congress.
Meanwhile, the House Democrats plan to vote tomorrow to impeach President Donald Trump just 7 days before the end of his term. They have already tabled a resolution asking Vice President Mike Pence to remove Trump over last week's riots.
Indonesian authorities have retrieved a black box from the budget airline jet that crashed into the Java Sea on Saturday, killing all 62 on board. In a news conference, Military Chief Hadi Jahanto said the cockpit voice recorder will also be found very soon. It was the second major air crash in Indonesia since the Lion Air incident in 2019, killing nearly 190 people. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says his country is ready to mend ties with the EU while calling on the bloc to display the same determination. Speaking in Ankara, Erdogan expressed hope that a recent decision by Turkey and Greece to restart talks aimed at resolving their disputes will herald a new era. But he called on Greece to avoid steps which he said were escalating tensions. He also urged the 27-member bloc to tackle the menace of anti-Muslim prejudice in their countries. Turkey and the EU are at odds over a range of issues, including Ankara's rift with Athens over the energy exploration rights in the eastern Mediterranean, Islamophobia, and Syria, among others. The EU has drawn up a list of sanctions against Turkey over its exploration of gas reserves in the eastern Mediterranean, but has postponed the measures until March. Qatar says it is ready to mediate between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. In a statement, Qatari Foreign Ministry's Special Envoy Mutlaq Al-Qahtani said the friendly ties between the two states is in everyone's interest. He said Qatar will mediate if the two sides are willing to accept it as a mediator. But he said this is due to the principle of consent as a basic principle in international relations. Earlier, a plane of Saudi Airlines landed in Qatar for the first time in over 3 years. Qatar recently signed a deal with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain and Egypt, which ended a 3 years of air, land and sea blockade on Doha. Egypt has reopened its airspace to Qatari aircraft, ending an embargo imposed on flights from Doha since 2017. Cairo Civil Aviation Authority says national carriers from both the countries can now submit flight operating schedules for approval. Agreements set to be activated will allow for transport of goods between the two countries. Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Bahrain have all announced the reopening of their airspace to Qatar. Last week, Saudi Arabia announced a US-backed deal to end a bitter dispute with Qatar. Palestine says it is ready to work with the 4 countries of the Munich group to revive the stalled peace process with Israel. Fatah's spokesperson Mahmoud al-Alul indicated Palestinian leadership's willingness to work with Egypt, Jordan, France and Germany. He said restoring matters to normal depends on establishing an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Earlier, the foreign ministers of the Munich group met in Egypt to discuss a peace process between Palestine and Israel. Meanwhile, Palestine has strongly condemned Israel's decision to build more 800 settlement units in the West Bank. Leaders of Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia have signed a pact to develop economic links and transport infrastructure. The decision came in the first meeting between Armenia and Azerbaijan after the Nagorno-Karabakh war. Hosting the meeting in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the ceasefire is being implemented successfully in the region. Putin brought the Armenian and Azeri leaders together to help them resolve problems that risk undermining the truce. The Russian president said that both the countries have agreed on a joint declaration to develop the region. The ceasefire agreement halted the 6 weeks conflict between Azeri and ethnic Armenian forces, locking in territorial gains for Azerbaijan. The UK has reported more than 82,000 deaths and 3.1 million cases since the coronavirus pandemic began. The US remains the worst hit with over 376,000 fatalities and 22.5 million infections. Globally, the virus has infected 90 million people and claimed over 1.94 million lives. More in this report.
With over a year past, the world is still at wit's end on not just the origin of COVID-19, but also on how to contain it. As the virus ravages America, the US-based biotechnology company Moderna says its vaccine can protect people for only a year. Experts have sounded further alarm after at least 2 gorillas at a zoo in San Diego tested positive. And a situation of near chaos reigns as state governments call each other's vaccine strategies flawed.
As it relates to vaccinations as well, we recognize that the current strategy is not going to get us to where we need to go as quickly as we all need to go. And so that's why we're speeding up the administration, not just for priority groups, but also now opening up large sites to do so.
Over in Europe, critics are blaming the relaxation of curbs over the holidays after Ireland reported the highest possible COVID-19 infection rate in the world. The UK's National Health Service says a quarter of the coronavirus admissions to hospitals are people under the age of 55. Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa has also tested positive for COVID-19. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that despite vaccine drives, herd immunity cannot be achieved in 2021. It says the start of vaccination in the developing world by February depends on the suppliers.
Require the cooperation of vaccine manufacturers to prioritize deliveries to the COVAX facility. We require the cooperation of our financiers to see through the financing necessary, and we require the cooperation, as Dr. Tedros said, of those key suppliers to make sure that we have the necessary data to ensure these vaccines meet all of the criteria necessary in terms of efficacy, safety, and quality.
Japan is set to extend the state of emergency for 3 more prefectures to stem the spread of coronavirus. Meanwhile, a study in China has found that most COVID-19 patients are still suffering from symptoms 6 months after infection.
In Pakistan, 41 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This pushes the country's death toll to 10,717. Health officials reported 2,408 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, there are more than 34,000 active cases in the country. The Health Ministry says out of over 506,000 countrywide cases, more than 461,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China's Sinopharm will arrive in Pakistan by the first week of February. Special Advisor to Prime Minister Dr. Faisal Sultan says it will include 1.1 million doses for about 500,000 people. In China, at least 22 workers are trapped under rubble after a gold mine explosion in eastern Shandong province. Chinese authorities say officials are trying to rescue the survivors. The rescuers have so far been unable to contact the trapped miners as the blast damaged the communication signal system. State media says the mine was owned by Shandong Wakai Investment Company. Earlier in December, at least 18 people died after being trapped in a mine in southwestern city of Chongqing. 10 people have died and 5 others are critically ill after drinking a suspected spurious liquor in India's central Madhya Pradesh state. Police say the actual cause behind the incident can only be established after the post-mortem report, but local media reports say the people were taken to hospital for treatment as they started vomiting after consuming the liquor. Mass deaths from drinking spurious liquor are common in India as they contain methanol, which is used as an antifreeze or fuel. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Russia, 8 people have died when a fire broke out in an apartment building in the eastern city of Urals. Officials say a child was among those killed. Investigators have opened a criminal case to determine the cause of the fire. 90 people, including 9 children, were evacuated. Twitter says it has suspended over 70,000 accounts dedicated to sharing QAnon content. This follows the Capitol Hill riots by armed pro-Trump protesters last week. In a blog, Twitter said the accounts were engaged in harmful QAnon-associated content at scale. It said they were primarily dedicated to the propagation of the conspiracy theory. QAnon backers have pushed conspiracies on social media, including a baseless claim that Trump is secretly fighting pedophiles in government, business and the media. Supporters of the QAnon movement were among the crowd that stormed the U.S. Capitol building. Scientists with machetes and calipers have taken to the Brazilian Amazon, but the only war they are fighting is against climate change. More in this report.
The machete-wielding scientist ventured into the Amazon, hacking through the dense jungle as the mid-morning temperature soared past 38 centigrade. Soaked in sweat, the small group of men and women sawed and tore trees limb from limb. They drilled into the soil and sprayed paint across tree trunks. This is vandalism in the name of science, part of an effort to measure more precisely how much greenhouse gas is absorbed by different types of forest in the Amazon basin.
We are losing areas of forests in the world. We need to know the role that the forests play, if it is a positive one in capturing carbon, or if it is negative by emitting greenhouse gases. Every time there is deforestation, there is an emission of greenhouse gases. Tropical forests are among the highest emitters of greenhouse gases affecting climate change. This work is important to quantify this, to have real data.
Carbon dioxide is the most prevalent of the greenhouse gases which lock heat into the Earth's atmosphere. Trees soak up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it as carbon, one of the cheapest and easiest ways to curb emissions.
The environmental ecosystem has no borders. What happens here has a greater impact on global society. That is why working to conserve the Amazon affects global society.
Deforestation in the Amazon has accelerated during the administration of Jair Bolsonaro, the right-wing president of Brazil. Since he took office in 2019, at least 825 million tons of carbon dioxide have been released from the Brazilian Amazon. That is more than emitted by all U.S. passenger cars in a year. The machete-wielding
Swiss free skier Fabian Bosch has completed a double front flip of the 50-meter jump in Engelberg with a speed of 90 kilometers per hour. Take a look.
Swiss free skier Fabian Bosch has completed a double front flip of the 50-meter jump in Engelberg with a speed of 90 kilometers per hour. The two-time world champion and Winter X Games gold medalist completed the jump down the steepest hill in the World Cup. The full 36-degree incline usually brings ski jumpers up to speed. Bosch skied down the hill backwards in a switch, then spun himself forward towards the kicker below to launch himself high into the air. He generated enough speed in the air to pull off the first front flip with ease, and then extended himself down the mountain to complete the second front flip.
It was really scary. Like the moment when you go towards the jump and I knew I wanted to do a double front flip, it was just like, what am I doing here? But there's like, when you're over the point of no return, then you just go for it.
The 23-year-old player won Winter X Games gold in Espen 5 years ago, as well as capturing 2 World Championship titles in 2015 and 2019.
Wall Street stocks have opened lower as traders continue to weigh the market's elevated valuations. Investors have pinned their hopes on rising U.S. Treasury yields. The indices of S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average have traded marginally lower, but the Nasdaq Composite Index traded 0.25% higher. Meanwhile, the oil prices hit their 11-month high over tighter supplies and an expected drop in the U.S. inventories. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.